Hello, and welcome to the Resilient Leader's Journey, a podcast where we navigate challenging currents of growth and change. If you're enjoying this series, please subscribe. Tell somebody about it. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your audio podcasts. My guest today, he's right over there, is John Olerio. John's the executive director at University of Rhode Island's Office of Strategic Initiatives. He was named by Providence Business News as one of the 40 under 40. For those who don't know that, that means he's on a trajectory to take over the world, be master of the universe in just a few years. He's got degrees from a few places, but most notably a doctoral in philosophy from the University of Rhode Island. Go Rams. John, good morning. How are you today?
Morning, friend. I am doing great. I'm so excited to be here today with you.
How wonderful. The pressing question I have is, John, what would Aristotle say about performance reviews?
Whew. Aristotle would say that performance reviews are about the last thing we need to be doing right now, I think, in March. But I am excited to see how we might view our performance at the end of this one here today, Trent.
Okay. I think Aristotle would say it's more about the habits you create than the output you produce, is what I would think if I were to go back to my from the first Reagan administration last time I studied Aristotle. So John, maybe you could take a minute and tell us what the Office of Strategic Initiatives does.
Absolutely. OSI is helping the state of Rhode Island grow the entire talent pipeline. So we're working with high school students, okay, on earning their first college credits. So that's the first thing. We're working with every public high school in the state, funded by the state of Rhode Island, to help students have that first initial spark about what it is they want to do as they progress through higher education and then enter the workforce. So we're exposing students to artificial intelligence through computer science classes. We're helping them hone their writing skills and doing all the things we know that they're going to need to do to be really productive members of society upon their matriculation into higher education. We're then responsible for much of the training, executive education that the university is doing for incumbent workers in Rhode Island. So really working with our partners, the biggest employers in the state, in the public and private sector, to say, what does your workforce need? How can the University of Rhode Island help you fill your gaps, grow your talent, and really innovate in the Rhode Island economy? And having that whole span from our future talent to our current talent it's a really exciting place to be, and we love the work that we get to do.
Yeah, so these employers come to the University of Rhode Island, to your department, because they need some level of gap training between the skill sets that they're walking in with and the skill sets employers need. What are some of the primary items that you think workers today, or at least your client base, needs to perform better for the finishing up the 21st century?
So leadership is still the biggest thing, Trent. It's the reason why you have a podcast. It's the reason why we're here today, right? When you've got that individual contributor who's primed to take on a team, who's primed to do what they're currently doing, right, and get to the next level, there's a certain skill set, there's a certain mindset that you need to have developed and be ready to go to change your whole frame, right? And so that is still the biggest thing we hear from employers is we've got this excellent person that we're ready to invest in. We know that life is about to change for them as they go from one role to the next. And so how can we equip them to continue to be a strong performer, right? But to also create the conditions to uplift others and to manage their time to be able to do both. And so the soft skills involved with leadership, the time management piece, but also, right, those fundamental functions of leadership of being a charismatic leader, being an empathetic leader, and balancing those two things. That to me is still the biggest need. It's the stuff that our staff gets the most joy out of. And I know that that's right up your alley.
It sure is. One of the things I speak quite a bit about are accidental managers, people that are thrust into roles because they were technically proficient or they've had tenure, but have never had the proper training to make them effective leaders.
And the best organizations, right, preempt that. Don't you think? I mean,
Yes.
that they say, okay, we've identified this person, and we know that even accidental or not, right? Whether you're as a person have been dreaming of leading a team, and this is all on your trajectory of the path you've laid out for yourself, or you're in that accidental situation where, hey, I happen to be really good at this job, and now I'm being offered a promotion. Um, in either instance, the training is still important, I think, and so the best organizations that we work with, right? They're doing this on a cadence, right? This
Sure.
that they've got curriculum that they've worked with us, where they feel really good that the curriculum, I mean, leadership curriculum, right? From one program to the next, I don't know how different it all is, but when you match it with the context of the employer, right, and match the employee's goals with the organization's goals and how they're trying to grow, I think that's the real sweet spot.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. So I appreciate that there are employers that are forward thinking. Let's talk about potentially the employers that aren't. You know,
Sure.
there are probably more employers by number, maybe not by volume, but by number, that don't see it the way your progressive or your forward-thinking companies do. How would OSI work with that group? How do you get involved there?
So I think when you're being reactive rather than proactive, it's good to get the context into why that is. Some employers, right, are being reactive because they've grown faster than they thought they were going to.
Sure.
And not the worst problem in the world to have, right? So if that's the case, right, it's like, hey, we're just scaling much faster than we thought. It's like, okay, so you're hiring a whole bunch of folks, right? And so it's a different context than, yeah, we've always, we're not necessarily growing. We're just we've never really invested in leadership. And okay, so what are you trying? Now that you are making that investment, right? What are the goals you're trying to do if you've been a little lax in developing something like this? And so really um, helping us understand why now? Why start today with something like this? That's going to help us help the employees get further faster.
Stephen Covey would have made it the seventh of his habits of highly effective people called sharpening the saw. You're laughing because you know this, right? But that's exactly what you're describing with these companies that grow so fast that I don't have time to train or invest in training because we have to spend our time growing. How do you try to overcome that logic with some of those bosses that have more than enough to do?
Well, yeah, with that, right? It's okay. You're developing leaders, but you're also building the structure of your organization, right? And so that's really we're talking about talent in that instance, but also we're building reporting lines in some instances, right? So in that particular instance, helping those organizations understand what's the investment in the talent, what's the investment in organizational development. We want those two things to mesh, certainly, right? But understand that there are two objectives being done there concurrently, and to the extent that OSI can help with both, we're all in. But of course, right, training is just one part of the type of growth that we're talking about.
Sure. Are you finding that the skills gap is wider at new managers or more senior managers?
That's a great question, and I think it's a great place to talk about kind of intergenerational dynamics because I think that's you in either instance, right? If you're a new person into management, um, you're probably going to be managing someone who's older than you potentially, right?
Sure.
That and for the same instance, right? If you're an established manager and suddenly Gen Z is entering your workplace, um, then I think both of those things can present challenges. And it's one of the things that we're hearing from employers a lot is the training we need is to help bridge the gap between these generations, right? Of these, more established folks who the idea of, you know, being in a job for 6 or 9 months and thinking you're ready for a promotion is totally foreign to them, versus Gen Z, right? Who they've spent their whole life on camera, right? They've shared so much. When they feel like they're ready to speak, they speak, speaking in broad terms here, and to them, that's how they've been socialized, right? So, I think helping organizations through that and understanding that both of these emerging leaders or these established leaders, um, with these generations coming of age, together is presenting a need for training of both, I think.
This concept of intergenerational leadership and management didn't exist 10 years ago. It's a novel concept. I'm not sure how much COVID would have played to it, but it's a novel concept that we and I am at the forefront of Gen X. Not far from baby boomer, but this concept that we have to adapt to and coddle to a younger workforce is an anathema to where I spent 40 years. But yet it is so evolutionary now, and it's so. How come we didn't see this back in the 80s or the 90s or the aughts when we could have made better progress? So why do you think there's a push now? Why is this intergenerational discussion really coming to the forefront now, do you think?
So I do think there's something about when you enter the economy, right? I mean, so you're kind of a graybeard Gen X, right? I'm yeah.
Wait. I shave.
And as a millennial, right, who entered the economy in 2009, right, amid the recession, you know, I think there was this mentality of like, oh man, you get that entry level job with unemployment, or hovering around 18-20%, whatever it was, you're really happy to be here. As someone who had a pretty expensive undergraduate degree, moved back home, was working at a couple restaurants, and decided to get my MBA.
Go Boston College Eagles, right?
There you go. That's exactly right. And you think about post COVID, as you mentioned, right? I mean, the economy was running so hot. These young people were being hired at a time where quiet quitting was a thing. And so the idea that you could come into an organization, there's still turnover above you happening at a rapid rate. And you could maybe ask for a raise or ask for, and the organization would be in such a place where it's like, you know what? This person has been doing well. We do have all these open positions. Yeah, we can, the last thing we want is more turnover. Maybe we can find a way to make it work. I do think that maybe those particular conditions and in the way these young folks were socialized kind of did create this perfect storm where suddenly the payoff in the organization was there in a way that certainly was not for me, and definitely was, no one was thinking in the 80s and 90s, right?
It wasn't even on the chart. It was, and this is not to say I'm not one of these people. When I was your age, I'm not one of those people. But it was different, and that's all. There was a very different expectation about college, job, marriage, family, middle age, and this dynamic has changed with your generation, and certainly the one pull up the rear behind you, and that's not really the rear because there's Gen Alpha that's coming around the corner, who are the base now of University of Rhode Island. It's very different. Okay, so let's pick it 10 years forward. What does it look like then? How does this intergenerational thing, or do we even talk about it then, do you think?
I, I do think we'll be talking about it because AI is going to be I think AI will be in the center of that, right? And so how the different generations interact with that particular technology, I think will be how we're talking and thinking about this in 10 years. I think that, in 10 years, right, the students in undergraduate education that I work with, right, their entire education will have been in the context of AI. And so, what will that mean for the skills that you still need to learn moving through a program of study at the bachelor level? And what are the leaders? What is expected of a leader in the AI era, as an incumbent worker? I think that is going to be what we're talking and thinking about. It. Where do you come down on all that? I mean, this is uh, everyone's a prognosticator in this way, don't you think?
I do. I do. Here's what I certainly see. I see students taking AI and passing it off as their own work and not intelligent enough to know that they can be caught doing it. For example, I had somebody turn in a paper and they were writing in one font, then copied from AI. So it's a different sentence structure and a different font. They weren't even smart enough to do that. They'll get better at that stuff. But here's the issue is that I think at the bachelor level, um, we have to integrate AI. We have to teach how to use it, but we have to still be able to say, okay, some of the rote thinking's gone, and we just have to skip to critical thinking. And that's where I think the next 10 years, certainly in lower level education goes. That
And I think you're exactly right, Trent. And for me, thinking about this from a resilient leader context, right? One of the things I always try to do that I think a good leader has to do, you model the fact that you believe the joy is in the doing,
right,
right? That that yeah, you could have AI write the entire paper, and maybe you get a B. Maybe someone, if you paste it correctly, no one notices the multiple fonts, right? You paste this plain text, you get that part down. Um, but there's an opportunity cost of not engaging in the work. And you may not feel it in that particular class. You may not feel it in the class that follows. But I do believe that at some point, right, not using it to get from the rote behavior to the critical thinking, to just let them bridge that gap, that eventually that will catch up for a student who is still investing, right? They're not investing the time and effort in their education, but they're investing their tuition and fees
yes,
all the same, right? I think the universities that do this best in the next 10 years, right? They're going to find a way to have their bachelor's degrees credential the critical thinking that you described. And employers are going to find a way in the hiring processes to weed out who is and is not, sending folks into the job market with those right credentials. So I think that's going to be the secret sauce. And I do think the leadership of faculty and staff and administrators in higher education, everyone's got to be rowing in the same direction with this stuff. Not necessarily in how the AI gets used in the class, but that constant mantra of we believe in putting in the time and effort. We're still putting in the time and effort to engage you as a student, right? And we're going to continue to hold you to high expectations of doing that with us as a member of our community.
sure, I'm with you. The I once to a friend was explaining. I said AI at the student level now is the same as smoking when you're that age, right? You don't feel the effects until years down the road.
I
And I
love
think that
that.
you're right. As students, you don't feel the effects of using AI until you get to a job interview where that next level of thinking has to come in, and you're like, but I copied it from AI. There's quite a slip between the cup and the lip that's going to come, and I believe that employers are ready for that. What do you think about that? Do you think employers are ready to weed those people out?
If they're not now, they're going to be, right? I mean, we're seeing layoffs begin, right? As a result of AI, we're seeing the stalling of hiring at the entry level. So it is happening now, and I think that that will be the trend.
Sure,
Um, and it's going to be so interesting how it all plays out.
sure. The kids that are in school now were in middle school when COVID happened. Is there a difference between the quality of student or the skill sets of students from what you had before and what you might have now? And if so, what do they need to do to accelerate their pace to get back to, we'll call, some level of baseline?
Yeah, I don't think that generally speaking there is a quantifiable difference in skill at the university level, right? The students who we're admitting, um, on paper, right? They are not altogether different than who we were admitting pre-COVID.
Hmm.
I do think, right, that there is, I teach one class a semester, right?
What do you teach?
I teach a 100 level management class in the spring, right? Trying to show just that introductory how management, right, helps solve problems.
Okay.
And we talk, we use my experience to help them understand, right, as stakeholders, right, how universities try to solve problems, and for them to see, okay, you're a stakeholder, you feel these management practices, how might you take them and use them in your career? But before your experience in higher ed, I mean, you got to class, you chatted with the person to your left, you chatted to your person with your right. When I walk in the classroom, my room is silent. I mean,
Interesting.
everyone is on their phone, right? It is they're still being social before class in the way that you and I were, but not with the person to their left or to their
That's
right,
right. That's right.
with somebody else. And so that is, you know, just when you think about networking, right? And how the I think that free the technology in your pocket that we have now, right? You just got, if you were interested in it, you've got very used to and acclimated to using pregnant times, these times in between activities to strike up conversations, uh, to find ways to engage other people. Those moments are increasingly gone. And so it's a skill they need to. It's a muscle they when it's time to go. Okay, I'm going to need to go networking at a career fair, or as a new employee, go to my first networking event and meet other folks. That's a new skill that maybe kind of happened organically for you and I in a different way.
And a frightening one. And a frightening one for people that haven't had to, exercise that muscle for 10 years or whatever it may be. When you're in your 100 class, how would you define to your class what an effective leader is?
I think the first that you've got to be true to yourself, right? If you're trying to be some model of a leader that you have in your head, I think the folks who are, ideally you're trying to lead, they're gonna sniff that out. They're gonna understand that you're trying to project something that really isn't inherent in you, and so finding leadership authentically, I think, is a really big part of it. Um, I think you do need to understand how you want charisma to be a part of your leadership style. And you know, we talk to students in terms of management things like I asked them, do you think only extroverted people can be charismatic? Most hands go up, right? But um, I don't believe that to be. I think the person who has that quiet confidence and leads by example can find ways to intentionally make that charismatic in a different way than the rah rah, get one for the Gipper type of way that we all come to think of mostly when we think of charisma. So I think that's a really important part of it. And I do think that right now the empathy piece of holding people to really high standards in terms of production, right? And trying to get their very best out of them, but also doing that in a way where they feel supported. They feel like you care about the entire person, that their work life balance and their job satisfaction is something that you're actively thinking about, is a really important piece of this. And I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
You are just showing off your philosophy doctorate because Aristotle said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. So, exactly right. You're describing your effective leader has a really high EQ or EI.
You nailed it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. John, I have one last question for you. Who is your favorite fictional character?
Well, Trent, you invite someone on your podcast with all these vowels in their name, you start talking about fictional characters, you've been ready to talk about Rocky Balboa, okay?
What are you
So,
talking about?
all right, here we go, right? So, when I think about resilience, right, how many fictional characters have an actual statue, okay, that is erected in a place? Name another one besides Rocky Balboa, all right?
That's a
So,
great question. A fictional, and we're not talking somewhere in Disney, right?
nope. We're talking
That's
about
a
in a
great
public
question.
place.
I don't know the answer to that. Oh, I do. I do. Ready?
Here we go.
In the Netherlands, they have the Hans Christian Andersen, the skater, on one of the rivers.
All right. Well,
But otherwise, yes.
I'm gonna rely on the audience to fact check that one because that's beyond me. But I mean, really and truly, right? I mean, rock to me, I grew up with those movies. I hear that music, I get going right away. And that, just everything about Rocky's story, the self awareness that he had, right? I mean, he knows he's not the smartest guy to ever walk around the streets of Philadelphia.
A mouthful, a
Uh,
couple of coconuts.
but a guy who names his two turtles Cuff and Link and can take a punch like that, that's the guy who I think defines
That
resilience.
is a great fictional character, and I will make a modest confession. Every time I watch Rocky 2, I cry. When she's in the hospital and she just goes, just win, Rocky. And Mick's like, what are we waiting for? And the tears are blubbering. Oh my God, Rocky, let's go.
I think the next time you're in Providence, Trevor, we're gonna have to watch Rocky 2 together, box of tissues, and really, really, really enjoy that part together because it's my favorite scene as well.
We will call it a date. John Olerio, Executive Vice President, URI's Office of Strategic Initiatives. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a great conversation.
Yes, it was. Thank you so much. This was awesome, Trent.
Folks, resilient leaders face challenging currents, and it's tough navigating. But with one tack or another, we can get there together. If you enjoyed this show and listen to nice, brilliant people like John here, please subscribe. Go find us. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Look forward to seeing you again next time. Be well.